Welcome to the Ultimate Sacrifice Show, where combat veterans and Gold Star families have a voice. Hey, and welcome to the next episode of the Ultimate Sacrifice Show. So this show is going to be a little bit more untraditional, not as structured as the other shows have been, and we don't have any guests on. It's just me. We've been talking about a very long time about the fact that I need to get on, and I need to be as transparent and authentic with every one of our followers as anyone could possibly be, because starting this foundation it wasn't a lifelong dream to do this. This came because of a certain situation and a gap that we saw that needed to be filled. However, it doesn't mean that I am immune to any of the struggles that so many of our veterans or Gold Star family members or current service members have upon either exiting or even when they're in the military or when they've lost a loved one on the front lines. I'm not, impervious to any of this. It definitely has affected my life since I've been out. What I've tried to do with a lot of that is turn it and make it into a positive rather than a negative. Very much so, easier said than done. However, we're continuing to try to raise the bar on that, and we're continuing to find ways to give us that quote-unquote high outside of the combat and the just overall adrenaline rushes you get from the military that are near impossible to find on the civilian side. But how can we learn about ourselves even more so? And working with a top psychologist has helped us big time, just with our behavioral traits, with our emotional traits, with, what type of moods get us, or what type of situations get us into different moods and emotions. How can we play that to our advantage? Where can we really turn things into a positive in our lives via, outdoor events or indoor or whatever, what have you. I've heard so many different, veterans and service members and Gold Star family members tell me what they do and how they can lead themselves to a stable and overall successful life. And it's just fascinating how everyone kind of has a different piece of the pie or a different thing that they go to. So I wanted to get on, and I wanted to be very real with everyone, and I wanted to kind of talk about my life. I know it's not super interesting, but it's important being the CEO of the Ultimate Sacrifice Foundation that you know who the heck I am, and you know that this stuff is not immune to me. Every single day is still a struggle, believe it or not. I want to start with my military career, so everyone knows who I am. And I'll make all of this stuff so brief because I don't even want to talk in front of a camera about me necessarily. It's just very important. I was in the military from 2007 to 2016. I was in the 173rd Airborne, and then I ended my career with the 10th Mountain Division. I was an infantryman. I pretty much did every job as an infantryman. I did other jobs in the 173rd too, which really led me to become a rock solid leader. That unit, the 173rd, and obviously, the 173rd is famous because of all of the documentaries that are out there today and all of the intense combat and the remote outposts that so many of, my brothers and sisters were thrown out to defend. But the 173rd also is a unit that is small enough where you can truly attack different points and really hone in and make an emphasis on those points. Whereas in like bigger units in the military, it's more of like a check the block because there's so many people, there's so just much quantity to get through that sometimes the quality, and I'm not saying other units aren't as qualified, they absolutely are, but sometimes quality has to be just denigrated slightly to get these mass quantity of numbers through. And anyone who's ran a range understands exactly what I'm talking about. Running ranges with the 173rd is a lot different than running with the 10th Mountain. You have thousands of people to get through. Obviously, all these units are phenomenal. I'm just going to tell you what I know from my personal experience. So the 173rd really taught me a lot. And I'll say the one piece of the pie that I took away from the 173rd was learning how to emotionally deal with everything. Now, with us being in these, places like the Kunar province, Logar province, Wardak province, really bad provinces, even Paktia and Paktika, along the eastern portion of Afghanistan. It was all Regional Command East. You take, whether you're at, a place like Fob Shank, which I was at for a very long time, you are going to bad places. Baraki Barak, I remember him. Rout Squib was there. Wardak had a bunch. Tengi Valley wasn't far. But then also places like Kunar, where you have the Korgal Valley, you have the Pesh River Valley, the Wagall, and back when, when not happened with those guys back in 07, 08, that was 08, when not, they went up into Nuristan, which, really like no one was there anymore. I think they closed Kop Bella after that. And the point being is that everyone was siphoned into a place like Shank. So, the 173rd owned all these little battle spaces, but everyone was siphoned into Shank via, medevac birds or Kazivac or whatever the transport was. It was the closest first-line trauma center that there was. So we were taking in casualties left and right. Not only were you seeing that, a lot of people, at least, on the front lines in any of these provinces, but when you were back at a place like a Fob Shank or a Sadabat or any of these places that can take in a first-line trauma before they get, brought out to a bigger place, you're seeing that every day, nonstop. So the 173rd adopted a lot of different, like a one-shot, one-kill training and all kinds of other stuff to kind of help, first and foremost, with your emotional state and how do you regulate. And one-shot, one-kill is like, it's more of, you go smoke yourself on a range and then learn how to shoot, like get yourself back down. It's almost like sniper training, but a little different. But on the emotional side of the house, being able to rapidly go through, courses and have such a tight-knit community of a smaller community like the 173rd, and just being placed in these places really helped excel me farther into my career, because it was almost like everything has already been there, done that, or seen that, or learned that, or taught that. And so when I got to the 10th Mountain, I felt like, I was a step ahead of my peers at the time, because I just felt confident in my own skin. And I know a lot of the people of my brothers and sisters that came from the 173rd felt the same exact way when they went to other units. But my time in the military was awesome. I'm not going to say it's not. I had the hardest decision in my life when 2015 came around. I just got back from what ended up being my final deployment. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I had Joey at the time. I had my son. And, me and Lauren were still pretty much a new couple. We were like a little over 3 years married at the time. And I had to decide, was I going to stay in or was I not? I just got a really awesome gig down with the Scout Platoon in 187. And I loved that platoon. I mean, we were a bunch of savages. We were, balls to the walls at all times, but it was a brotherhood like I'd never felt before in my life. And I came down on orders that I didn't want to take. And here was my thought process at the time is, just like so many of us, I thought I was one of the baddest dudes on the planet at the time. And I didn't want to be taken off that line. I couldn't understand why the Army and why my commander would sign off on such an asset that could be going down range again, and laying lead to the enemy, but they want him to go instruct for 3 years likely at a course. Now, I know this is the progression in the military a lot of the times. They want to use whatever assets they have around them, or that your number comes up and they're just like, sorry, there's a million of you. But I didn't view it as that. I viewed it that they were taking an extreme asset off the line, and it was not good for the military. And it certainly would not have been good for me. I did not want to do that. That's not what I signed up to do. I signed up because I wanted to fight a war, just like so many of us. And then that war, I felt like was being dragged under my feet. And they're like, oh, thank you. We know so many of your brothers and sisters have shed their blood, and you've either been there or seen it on the back end. But now you're just going to go sit at a school for 3 years. So I wasn't about that. So once I knew that, it wasn't going to be in my favor, I had to make that decision to get out. Now, I remember, here's my transition. I remember getting out, and part of what we do at the Ultimate Sacrifice Foundation is we adopted this Resilient Warrior program which plays a lot off of the missing gaps that our transition assistance program, it's called SFL TAP, in the Army missed. And they were missing a lot of it because it ended up being a numbers game, just like so many of us, and so much personnel has said in the past that the SFL TAP system has just adopted into, we'll email you out and this is what you have to do, rather than it really honing in on the individual soldier or family member for that matter. So that's a lot of what we've been doing with this new program we adopted, and it's still in the works because I really want it to be, and we all want it to be, as perfect as possible. But my transition was funny. Like, no one thought that I was actually going to get out. I remember the day I left, which for any of my soldiers that were there at the time, that was one of the hardest days of my life, leaving the Army. And I might have played it off very well and not shed a tear, but I promise you, when I looked back at that Fort Drum sign and I knew that this was it, I wasn't coming back, that was extremely hard for me. I couldn't fathom not being, this lethal badass soldier that I envisioned myself being, and I just didn't want that to have to lay on anyone else's shoulders. And I also didn't want to let, the soldiers below me and, even seniors, subordinates, peers, any of them that looked up to me, because I know even when I was a senior, I looked up to some privates that I thought were amazing. I was like, wow, these people are badasses. I didn't want to let them down. And I feel like so many soldiers feel the same exact way, and service members in general, because not everyone's a soldier. I know you call a Marine a soldier, they flip out. But, and I love all the Marines out there, I'm just kidding. But that was very hard. And I know that story has probably been told a million times by a lot of different people, but that was my story. It sucked leaving. I went to a ton of schools, multiple deployments, did a lot of cool stuff. And then I felt like it was getting thrown in the toilet, and I was being placed back to somewhere I was extremely unfamiliar with, and I didn't even want to be at the time. But that was a decision for my family too. I knew that we just had Joey. We were talking about having another kid, and the reason why Chris came 4 years later, honestly, was because both of us, we number one, didn't really have time because I was gone all the time. But number two, we didn't want that life necessarily for our children, and the risk of me constantly being away and potentially not coming back, which was unfathomable and unthinkable at the time. But I saw too many of the top dogs that you thought were indestructible at the time perish and not come back to their families. And yeah, it's scary. I couldn't imagine not coming back to my kids. There's no doubt. So I transitioned out, and me and Laura moved back to a place in New York at the time, and it was an apartment. And I knew I wanted to be in the fitness industry. It was an extreme passion of mine at the time. I knew I could make a splash in it. So that's what I did. I ended up working in multiple places. I shielded everything out. All of my emotions were shielded out. During the next couple of years, we finally moved to another location near to what we're living now, and then we bought the house, but all in New York. But I was in the industry. I ended up doing bodybuilding shows. I was kind of in and out of the VA doing like the check the block appointments and all that stuff. Anything that could shield me. I went and got an MBA. I went back to business school, did my graduate degree, this, that, and the other. And anything that could shield me away from all of these emotions that I had is what I would attack. Those were my attack points. But on the backside of that, everything was building and building and building to where once I finished the graduate school program, once I finished my bodybuilding shows, I realized I don't want to do any of this crap. I felt like going to business school was the worst mistake of my life. I felt like the bodybuilding was ridiculous and stupid, and it's not. Honestly, it's one of the hardest things I ever did in my life. I have a ton of respect for that world. It just wasn't right for me at the time. So it put a damper on everything. And the biggest thing that it put a damper on was my family. And I didn't see that. Or maybe if I saw it, I wanted to blind it out. And so many of the people that will listen to this, and we haven't spread to Spotify, we haven't spread to Apple iTunes or any of that, because I didn't want a podcast to begin with. What I wanted to do was amplify all of these service members, veterans, and Gold Star families' voice after the Kabul incident, which is what we'll get into, which ultimately formed the foundation. But now I feel like it is ridiculously important. It's uber important for us to amplify this. And now that we do have a following and so many people view me, they don't know the other side. They don't know any of that because I haven't talked about it in the past, nor did I think it was appropriate to, nor do I think they'd even be able to imagine it. Or like I said before, it's unfathomable, the actual truth. So we didn't get out and jump into, multimillionaire stardom and this, that, and the other, all the cliche crap. No, this shit sucked. It sucked. Like when I make the joke of having $50 in your checking account or this, that, and the other, like I've lived it. We all have lived it. What I will say this, what Lauren and myself have went through and been through just together and what we've built, like we are damn proud that we now have a home for our family and we've done this shit all on our own. All on our own. Which we're super proud of. And Lauren has been home with our kids. Now she's a preschool teacher and does a bunch of other things. But she's been home and taken the brunt of it since we first had Joey, and maybe even before that when we were married and I was in the military. And I say when we were still married, but you get the gist of it. So moving forward, we moved finally into this house, but everything finally came down and erupted on me when the drawdown of Afghanistan was happening. Now, something probably that hasn't been spoken of before is you saw all those private veteran organizations that were running search and rescue missions in Afghanistan. And I spoke about this when I went on Fox News. I tried to be as honest as possible with the general public, and I will always do that if I ever go on a news segment again. But this destroyed me. It destroyed me. I was 4 or 5 nights I was up. I looked like a psychopath. I didn't know what to do. And seeing that on TV was like torment. So me and Colin Lineberger, because he's open about it, who's the COO for our foundation, who I served with, we tried to get into one of these teams. And we wanted to go back to Afghanistan. Now, I was not in the shape at the time to go hike in 14, 15,000 foot mountains running insertion missions, but I didn't give a shit. I wanted to. There's still a piece of me and so many of these combat veterans that wants to get back in the fight. They've just been there so many damn times. It is someone else's turn, and it sucks and it's unfortunate, but that's how the timetables work in our lives. We have an odometer, and it is what it is. But we wanted to go back one way or the other. And Colin's a beast too. So whatever I say doesn't really apply to him. He's an animal right now. But, I knew in my head, hey, I probably have a couple months of minimum of training that would need to happen if we really did insert, but I didn't give a crap. I just wanted to go lay down the law to the injustice seekers that the despisable Taliban are. And I wanted to lay down justice on them. There's still a lot of stones unturned, in my opinion. But the 13 were killed on that choke point. The 18 were critically wounded, and it crushed me. Sometimes I still have days where I think to myself, like, how on God's earth can this even play out and no one's even talking about it anymore? Like, the amount of, or the lack of understanding on such a high level is mind-blowing. When people make jokes of like 5th graders being able to draw up the drawdown of Afghanistan better, I don't doubt them. This wasn't something that you needed experience in the military for. This is a drawdown operation. And to even allow personnel, vehicles, anyone to get that close to be that lethal upon our soldiers during that operation is ridiculous. That should have never happened. And there were Bolo reports, and people keep forgetting that, we hit a car that killed 7 people. It was mainly a family. That was the wrong car it ended up being, and it just got swept under the rug. These families were treated like dirt at Dover. This is a true fact. I've spoken with nearly all of them. It's unfathomable to me. And I don't want to jump ahead on this because I'm going to get into that in just a bit. What I do want to talk about before I talk about that is not so much like personal struggles. Everyone's got a story, and I'd rather amplify them. I do want to talk about the emotional roller coaster, which I kind of talked about. Now, a lot of this is also stemmed off of the VA. I talk about this. I've been treated well at the New York VAs. The one downfall that I do see with a lot of these VAs, and again, they're handcuffed, they're stifled, okay? I fell into the trap of, we're going to give you this pill, whether it be an SSRI or, an attention deficit disorder pill or whatever it may be. And I took them, and you know what? They felt good. So I fell into the category of, I'm going to take them and I'm kind of going to be a zombie, but I don't care because it numbs out everything else. I'm especially with something like an Adderall. You have to be honest. Like, it numbs out all your other emotions, whether you have ADD or not. Okay. Adderall numbs out your emotions. It makes you a single faceted human being. And this is my experience. And you don't really care about anything else. You don't care about anything, social or financial or economical. You don't give a crap. You're almost like a sycophant. You'll agree with anyone because you just love that feeling. You love that high, and it's taking you out of an emotional state of grief and anger and pain. And it's placing you into an emotional state of anything goes. And I fell into that trap. I fell into it for a while. And, a lot of the issue with that too on a social level is, say you go to an event and it's a veteran event. Say it's a veteran event. Veterans will love to drink and laugh and be happy in front of each other. But for me, a lot of the times it was like, no, I don't like really being social, which I know it's shocker. It's more of a mind game. So mine would be, I want to drown everything out, and I can drink as much as possible there, or not, a lot, not literally as much as possible. And nothing else will matter to me, just having that good time. But the problem is the next day, the next week, the roller coaster of the doom and gloom emotion was unbearable to a point, completely unbearable, because you get off that high and you do not know what to do. You have no idea what to do. And so I think that causes a lot of the burnout that we see within our veteran community today. It's funny, I was talking with a kid who also wrestled like back in the day, and he's got a few extra pounds on him now. He's not 3% body fat or something freaky like you see so many wrestlers, but he's saying, like, once you go through something like that, and I think this applies to the veteran community, once you go through something like that where you push your body to the absolute freaking limit, you cut the weight. It's all about lethality. It's all about physicality. On the backside of it, you're not interested in it anymore. Like, it's like veterans going to the gym. Like, I just started to go back, like, big time. I know it's crazy. People think I just work out all the time. It's not a fact. It just didn't happen. After that, I burnt the hell out of it. I didn't want to do it anymore. Now I'm finally back, and I go to Powerhouse, which I love that gym. I think it's super cool. No one bothers you. Tons of equipment, clean, this, that, and the other. It's hard to get back into it, though, and I get it. It's like, that's not giving you a high anymore. And you seek it, until you get to understand your emotions. You get to understand what's going on in your head. And it's not only understanding it, but you get to understand how to apply that into real-world situations, i.e. sports or hobbies or learning or being social. For me, it was social ability and learning, which will take me out of boredom, which was my biggest mood or emotion. Sorry, Magda, if you listen, I forget what that stems to. But Point being is that, I learned that and it helped me, at least on a micro level, understand a lot more about myself. And that's what we want to get into, is having these veterans, these Gold Star family members, understand themselves. You have to understand yourself. You have to know what your attack points are going to be, not just what your moods and emotions are or what your triggers are, this, that, the other. What can you do moving forward to live your successful life? And that's why, like, our WP that we adopted is so important to all of us. But listen, that's really those emotional struggles, those personal struggles. Like, we have sucked the suck, and we have also lived the high life. And by the high life, I don't mean that we're millionaires. We're very far from it, but it doesn't matter. Like, any stem of success, and you can measure success based off of anything. People have different tables for success. My success is just being comfortable with my family, loving my wife, loving my kids, and that is it. All right? I want to be successful professionally, obviously. With friends, obviously. It has to be multifaceted in life, but first and foremost, just my family. I just want my kids and my wife to live a life that I believe they deserve. And I think they would say the same for me. That's number one. So I think I'll move into the entire Kabul situation, which I touched on. All right. And I don't want to take up too much more time, maybe 10 minutes. Okay. So the Kabul situation happened. I already told you how I felt about that. Now, once this happened, the biggest emotion that I was going through was anger. I was infuriated. All right. Trying to get on these teams. I don't know, Tim Kennedy, if you ever see this video, I know that Colin and me were probably overwhelming your Instagram inbox, but hi, this is this is who it was, man. What you guys did and what your boy Chad did and Nick was awesome, man. And, a bunch of other team guys that I just don't know the names of. Thank you guys. You've saved our ass, not only in combat so many times, but you truly made a gigantic difference. I think it was 160,000 that were finally evacuated out of Afghanistan. You made a huge difference in that drawdown. And without you guys, I don't know if we could have done that. So thank you so much for doing all of that. So I was dealing with anger. I was dealing with fear. I was dealing with depression. I think the pills started rolling in again at that time because I didn't know how to deal with it. Definitely alcohol, but alcohol never was my number one go-to. It still isn't. I don't even know if I'm going to drink anymore. It just doesn't interest me anymore whatsoever. And I just don't think it's good for you to begin with. Definitely food. I loved just enveloping myself in ice cream at the time. It was just a whirlwind of emotional freaking trauma watching that. I didn't know what to do for the families. I didn't know what to do for everyone reaching out to me. Like I said on the news, it wasn't a lie. Everyone up to a colonel all the way down to a private I talked to and was reaching out to me and me reaching out to them. I didn't have the answers. I got lucky enough to get on a news segment. I didn't have the answers, though. Yeah, at the time, I didn't have the answers to how to rectify the veteran situation or the Gold Star family situation at that time. I had the answers to how do we do an effective drawdown. I mean, like I said, a fifth grader could have done this. And if you wanted cool guy military tactical crap, I could have given it to you. But I think a lot of veterans could have given it to you and made it pretty damn simple and pretty damn easy. I'll say the number one thing that we did wrong, aside from what happened prior to the actual Kabul operation, number one thing was allowing the world's worst terrorist organization to control an entire city. Not going to happen, fellas. You guys get the fuck out or we're going to kill you. That's what should have happened. So that was the number one thing. Number 2, 3, 4, 5 are vastly different. But I think we've talked about this so much that I don't even want to get into that because that'll be an entirely different segment. Anyway, once that happened, I remember talking with a lot of people. I know that they were like, hey, listen, there needs to be something that starts, and we don't know what that is. But we're leaning towards the side of a nonprofit because you can do so much more with that. Obviously, a nonprofit is a charity-based organization, unless you're a privately operated or funded foundation, which can happen, but it's usually public charities. A lot of people get behind this. We thought that we could make the most splash for our community by making it a public charity. Obviously, none of us are millionaires, so we can't privately fund this, but this is what needed to happen, and I just took the plunge. There was no, I'm not a brainiac or anything like that. I didn't have some bigwig behind this that could say, this is exactly how you do it. We just started this and ran with it, and we were super successful year one because we're real dudes. We're authentic. There's nothing about us that isn't real, and there's nothing about us that truly doesn't have, a helping and caring bone in our bodies. I didn't realize how much we would care about this, to be honest with you. I just knew that initially we couldn't fathom not being able to be there for the 13 families and, even eventually, hopefully, some of the 18 that were wounded. And that's how this started. And that was really it. And everything else, like the Warrior Ride and all these events and these programs we adopted over the last year, yeah, we got help from consultants and outsourcing, but this has remained authentic. This was our view from day one. This is what we want to do. And there's no one better that's going to know exactly what needs to be done rather than ourselves. A lot of the reason why, at sometimes it looks like they're stalling or, why is this program taking so long? This is happening because this isn't a one-size-fits-all shoe that we're wearing here. This is a very individualized program. The trauma or whatever that I've been through is going to be different on many levels than what, Tim Kennedy's been through, or, Tina from Missouri or Bob from California who are veterans. It's going to be different. Everyone has a different story. But it was so important to me because the war in Iraq and Afghanistan are mysteries to our population. And they're some of the worst wars we've ever fought. I just saw a stat on ABC News. They were talking about, I'm sure everyone's seen Restrepo, and obviously I was in the 173rd, so that's near and dear to me. But I just saw a stat from ABC from like freaking way back when. This was like 2010, or no, this was like 2008 or 9, they came out with this. In the first 5.5 months of that deployment, the 173rd was in over 450 firefights already in 5.5 months. Like, I don't think this has been seen before. I really don't. And I don't know the final statistic for that deployment or really anyone thereafter, because we were thrown back in the same shithole in 2009, 2010. Plus 10th Mountain that I was in was there as well. Before that, and then I deployed with them back to RC East in 2013, I believe. So this isn't immune to many units. There were tons of units out there, and this was widespread. Like, I want to know how many freaking firefights or mortar rounds all these units were in, because I think that this is easily the most of... I've never heard of this in my entire life. I've never heard of the overwhelming numbers of people in combat in one way, shape, or form in my entire life. Both Iraq and Afghanistan. It's interesting. That's for a topic for another discussion, but I really want to get into that because I think a lot of that is raining on the fact that, now nearly our entire generation that served is out. There's probably 5 or 10% of people still in, but these are the people that are outside now, and this is all we know. I wasn't alive during Vietnam. I wasn't alive during World War II. I don't know that, but I do know now, and I do know the ridiculous numbers and the personal experience via numbers that we have, and I'd really love to dig into that. So our foundation was formed. We're in year 2 now, and it feels good. It feels good to finally talk about that. It's a little weird because I don't like doing this in front of a camera, and I certainly don't like doing this, spreading it to the public, but it just needs to be done. If it's not done, then no one's going to do it. And we have the platform. We own the foundation right now. We're looking to do big things in 2023. We have a wide array of events, community healing engagements, our RWP program lined up for 2023, and we can't wait to make a splash. We can't wait to follow through on some of the promises that we initially said we were going to follow through on. We just needed to ensure all of this could be funded because it is unfortunately not cheap. but we don't really care. We know it's not going to be. We know that in order to make the biggest impact, it's going to take a lot of dollars, which we anticipate on doing the legwork to make, so it can benefit all of you service members, veterans, the Gold Star families that are listening to this. I'll come on and be a little bit more open and honest when I get questions and stuff. I just kind of felt like today was a really good day to do that. I listened to a couple other podcasts and I was like, if this is going to remain authentic, then I need to be authentic to the American population. I am the most imperfectly perfect human being on this planet. This is just a fact. I don't really have much to bring to the table, but what I do have, I intend on bringing at 100%. And I'll tell you that we have a lot of really smart people in our corner and a lot of really authentic people who care in our corner, which is number one to us. Pride, authenticity, and respect is kind of the triad of verbiage that we use for the Ultimate Sacrifice Foundation. If anyone's wondering what those stars are, the 3 stars, aside from the other logo with the 13 stars and the 18 leaves, that's obviously for the 13 fallen and the 18 wounded during Kabul. But that verbiage is what's used in those stars. That's why it's there. Just in case anyone was wondering, because we've gotten that question a lot before. But I'm going to stop jabbering because now we're over 36 minutes in. I'll come back on and I'll do this. I know that we need to get back into this podcast. I think eventually one day I'll throw this out to Apple Podcasts or Spotify. But I don't really want to listen to myself talk, and I don't think that I bring the most to the American public. I really don't. I think there's just so many other stories. And being in the 173rd, it's like I know there are so many other people that have way cooler stories and way more heroic stories, and I'd love to amplify them. But a lot of them feel the same way. So that is all. I am off to Powerhouse Gym. I'm going to go lift, and we all need to change this ball game for each other. It's obviously, I'm not going to change it for the masses. One other person's not going to change it for the masses. I think if we slowly trickle as a collective unit, we can certainly start to change it. And a big thing before I go, in 23 is when we start to annualize these events. Now, the events aren't fundraisers necessarily. There's a couple of them. They're strictly community healing engagements. And a lot of people are like, well, why are you doing that? That's not really a program. I do not care. From day one when we started this foundation, you asked, and I mean the general public, asked what's going to make the biggest impact within our communities. There's your answer. Our community healing engagements, something to look forward to on an annual basis, to get back together with like-minded, goal-oriented success seekers, as our entire military community and family are. So that's your answer. The programs, they speak for themselves. They've been effective thus far. I can't wait to amplify them and continue to refine them. But I really do truly believe that our community healing engagements are number one. And I know if you look for like grants and stuff on the nonprofit side, that's not going to secure you a grant, all right? You're going to need public funding for it. You're going to need your own money. We've spent a lot of our personal funds to get these done, which is totally fine. It's totally fine by me. But I know it's going to be the most effective. I know for a fact because we've been there, we've seen it. The proof's in the pudding. It's trial and error. So with that said, maybe a couple months, once I get more questions and stuff, I'll pop back on. I don't even know if this is interesting or compelling, but I'm going to continue to be authentic with everyone. I'm going to be real. We love each and every one of you. I can't wait for some of these events in 23. If you're signed up to come to an event, know that I look forward literally to each and every one of you being there that we've reached out to, that I've talked to already. It's really what we want to do moving forward. And hopefully, I can't wait to make this full time. I would love for this to, even though it is full time technically, I'm talking about on, a personal level where I can devote all of my time and, make this something that is the sole proprietor of my energy. Because that would really make a lot of us happy. And I think that's what we need for our community, especially after 2 decades worth of what we just saw. Anyway, I will see you guys next time, and have a great day.